This is not IT band pain. This is. So if your pain is here, that's something completely different. We'll talk about that in a different video. But if your pain is here at the lateral knee, then stick around because that's what we're gonna go over. First off, I wanna empathize with you because I know personally this can be a very nagging and very painful experience. You may have tried ice, you may have tried dry needling, you may have tried foam rolling, you may have tried stretching, you may have gone as far as trying cortisone injections. We're going to talk today about why those things probably have not helped, or at least in the long term, and what you can do about it in order to finally get this to go away. So let's first start with an anatomy review. The IT band basically starts with the glute max muscle in the TFL here in the front, and then turns into this thick band of connective tissue, fascia technically, as it comes down the lateral thigh and inserts onto what's called Gerdy's tubercle on your tibia, your shin bone. So now let's talk about who gets IT band pain, aka IT band syndrome. Most commonly is going to be long distance runners, but also very, very common in cyclists, common in long distance walkers, common in hikers and hunters, common in athletes who do a lot of repetitive running and change of direction, and also common in sedentary individuals who go from doing not much at all to doing a ton very, very quickly and essentially overloading that IT band. So a perfect example of that avatar would be a 45-year-old mom who now finally has time to prioritize herself because her kids are getting a little bit older or they're out of the house, and she jumps right into CrossFit doing a ton of step-ups, a ton of lunges and squats, and a ton of box jumps, and out of nowhere she has this sharp, crazy pain on the side of her knee. Now she also might have this, but again, that's a different thing coming from the low back. We'll do another video on that. Regardless of who you are, it always comes down to an overload of the tissue. Whether or not you ran more miles than you were currently able to tolerate, or maybe you did a massive downhill descent on a mountain and that was something that you haven't done in a couple of years and you overloaded the IT band, or maybe again you're in the sedentary category and you went from not doing much at all for a long period of time right into doing a ton in a short period of time. Essentially what you've done is you've overloaded the IT band, you've exceeded its current tolerance, and now it's pissed off and sensitive, and it's letting you know that you need to do something about it. And now that it's sensitive, very low level, everyday tasks can become incredibly painful. Such as just walking up and down stairs, even bending down to tie your shoes, or getting in and out of a car can actually be painful. You might even start to feel a snapping sensation over the side of the knee because things are so inflamed over there. So now what we need to do is we need to allow it to calm down, but then slowly build it back up. And I want to highlight the build it back up because that's why these other treatments don't work in the long term, because they're just designed to help temporarily with pain, which there's nothing wrong with that, but then we don't do anything to increase the capacity and the strength of the system and address why this happened in the first place. Because if you were ready to do the stuff that you jumped into doing, this type of injury would not occur. What to do? The first thing that you need to consider that is absolutely not sexy is load management. So you need to think about all of the daily tasks that you do that are currently aggravating the IT band and figure out how can I break them down and modify these activities to reduce the chance of essentially picking the scab. Every time this thing starts to heal and calm down, we pick the scab and make it bleed again. And before you know it, that scab hurts more than the initial injury because we continue to aggravate it. So essentially what I'm saying is modify the modifiable. So an example would be if you go to work 5 days a week and let's say there's no elevator and you have to ascend and descend 2 flights of stairs, what you want to consider for a short period of time is as you go up, let's say your right IT band is the one that's irritated, you would probably want to start with the left foot. okay? And then on the way down, just imagine I'm up on a step, you would want to lead with your involved side and control your body weight down on the uninvolved side. So these are the things that I would really pay attention to and how you can break them down. And these are the questions that I'm asking when I'm working with people, because as soon as they leave here in the clinic, I don't know what's going on. So that's why we have to really get them to be involved and play an active part in understanding what's going on so that the targeted rehab can be as effective as possible. So now let's jump into the 3 exercises that will likely make the most difference for you when recovering from IT band pain. Hey, real quick, if you've enjoyed this video so far and you found it helpful, please hit that like and subscribe button. It helps us out a ton. I appreciate it. So the exercises will obviously be different for every single person depending on how sensitive you are and what activities you're trying to get back to. But here's 3 that have helped my patients out a ton, and I know that they're gonna help you out. Okay, so the first exercise is a couch stretch. Essentially, we're getting your hip into extension, or thinking about it as your leg behind your body, which a lot of people don't get much of, especially if you're seated at a desk today. This is hip flexion. This hip would be in hip extension, okay? So what I would suggest is just getting a pillow, a pad, a towel folded up, and finding a wall. You're gonna place your knee down here, and then this could be a dowel, a broom, dining room chair, whatever you have, just for a little support. And then we're gonna drop to 2 knees, place one knee on the pad and your foot / mainly the back of your toe against the wall. So if you have sensitive toes, you probably do better with shoes on. And then you're gonna step through. I'm just using this for support. I'm gonna highlight a couple things here. We don't wanna turn this into just a lumbar extension exercise. Notice how arched my back is here. We're trying to target the tissues in the front of the thigh and the hip flexor. Okay, so what I would have you do here is give me a little glute squeeze. So as you squeeze the glute, 2 things happen. We get a little posterior tilt of the pelvis, and then we get more hip extension. From here, you may be like, that is literally all I can tolerate. That's totally fine. I want you to hold here and breathe for a couple minutes. If you prefer the paperclip method, which I call it just kind of bending back and forth until something gives, then you could certainly do this. It's just rocking forward and rocking back. And just remember, when you rock forward, we're not doing this. Okay, so rocking forward and rocking back, keeping a little squeeze here. Now, the regression of this, very simple, because a lot of people won't be able to do that, is bringing the pad further away from the wall and just making that angle a little bit easier, right? And I don't feel much there for me. So the first position was probably appropriate for me. It was maybe a 5 or 6 discomfort, but it was tolerable. Now, finally, ultimately what I would shoot for, I'm not saying you have to have this level of flexibility, but if you can get your knee all the way against the wall, there we go, and then step through and still have a pretty good position where you can squeeze the glute and drive forward, I would shoot for that. You'll notice for me, I'm not able to quite get there. My glute's cramping. I don't know what's going on. My hip is flexed. I don't have access, like controlled access to this position right now. I definitely have in the past, but I haven't prioritized this type of stretch in a while. One last thought, because I have seen people this stiff. When you get your knee this far away from the wall, the easiest version, there still are people that can't step through. Like they just can't get even there. So for those people, what I would say is let's actually start with the knee closer to the wall and then just work on getting your torso slightly more upright and squeezing the cheek here, and don't even worry about this leg yet. Okay, so you're just down on 2 knees with 1 knee in front, and you'll still get a big stretch here if you're that stiff. Reps, time, as far as dosage goes, again, this is gonna depend on every single person, but in general, a pretty good rule is 2 minutes per leg, twice per day, or if you like the paperclip method, you're doing 20 to 30 per side for 2 sets twice a day. A progression of exercise number 1 that is very, very helpful for IT band pain when added in at the right time is a Bulgarian split squat. So typical Bulgarian, foot will be up super high on a bench, you're probably not ready for that yet. So I would start with something a tad bit lower, and then you can certainly work your way up to a higher box. This is just here for balance if you need it. I'm gonna put it here. So back foot's elevated. You're gonna wanna give me like a little bit of a tuck of the pelvis. I'll show you the other side. A little bit of a tuck of the pelvis. As you do that, we put more of a stretch on the front of the thigh and the glute. We take out that arch in the low back. And then you're essentially just going to sink down, transferring your weight towards the front leg and then coming up and back. Okay. The depth doesn't have to be full. You could absolutely start here and then come up. The next group of muscles to work on are the hip abductors, and we can target those a variety of ways. We can do sideline abductions, we can do side planks, lots of things we can do here. But essentially these muscles on the side of the hip, primarily the glute med, but all sorts of muscles in here, are responsible for obviously moving the leg away from the body, responsible for stabilizing the pelvis and the trunk during gait or running, jumping. They're also responsible for rotation of the thigh to some degree. What I would start with, if you can tolerate it, the most simple thing to do that's the most bang for your buck is just doing an isometric side plank. Okay, so not a ton of coaching here. We're gonna try and get in a straight line from your feet to your knees, to your hips, to your shoulders. I think most people that I've worked with who have done side planks roll their eyes every time I give them to them because it's just traditionally such a hard exercise, which means most of us should probably do more of it. So what it's great for is hip strength, hip stability, but also trunk strength and trunk stability, and even shoulder and neck. So again, it has a lot of benefits that are throughout the whole body and not just for the lower extremity. Coaching it, stack your feet, hands on the hip, and then get your hip as high as you can, okay? You can do the isometric. I like to get people to work up to being able to tolerate 60 seconds at a time. Obviously break that down and build yourself up. You could also do hip dips. That's a way to do it. You can make the side plank harder by putting your foot on your shin and holding here and or dipping. And then finally, leg in front is very, very hard. If you're that strong, then probably don't even need to get stronger than that. I would just do it as an exercise to build up time. But if you want to get even stronger, then just put a dumbbell on your hip, or if you have a training partner, they can sit on you. If the side plank is just too hard in general, here's a couple regressions that are a bit easier and you can work back up to the side plank. One would just be a side bridge. So instead of pushing from your feet, we're pushing from your knees. Okay, we want to make sure you get your ribs up. So I usually say get away from a cactus. Okay, nice contraction there, and then press through your knees, bring your midline and your zipper up and forward. Okay, and we can just hold here for time, or if you like to do reps, that's certainly okay as well. One little step up from that would be just lifting that top leg. Then you take away the help of this inner thigh. Okay, those are both great options. If for whatever reason you can't do either of those because maybe you have a past shoulder injury or your neck's really sensitive, then grab a couple pillows, lay on your side, and just pop a very light band around your legs. There's obviously plenty of band walk variations and things like that. We're not going to go into those. Those are a fine option as well. In this position, head would probably be supported. What I want you to do is try and turn your toe in a little bit. Because if you turn out, then we're getting TFL and hip flexors and these other muscles that we're not trying to work on. So we're going to go foot straight up, lead with the heel towards the ceiling as far as you can. Give me a little squeeze. You should feel all that effort right here, and then back down. Okay, up and back down, and then rather than giving yourself a complete rest, because there's really no resistance here, I would keep constant tension on the band. And to build some endurance in this position, I'd say 15 to 20 reps would be a good place to start. 3 to 4 sets every other day. This is one that's certainly not a high load, high demand. So you can probably get away with doing it every single day as long as you don't get too sore. Third and final exercise for this video are wall slides. Now, not super fun, not super sexy, but very, very important. I will note that this does place a lot of stress on the knee, and in the early stages, before this thing has calmed down a bit, this may be too much. So I'm going to give you a couple considerations here that you can modify and make things easier, and then as always, I'll show you how to make it even harder. So find a wall. All you're going to do is get your foot let's pick a side, right? I would suggest, that's a good question. I would suggest doing both sides, because if you overloaded one side, there's a decent chance that you may overload the other side at some point. So I would say, if you have the time, do both sides. So if the right side was my problem side, then I would go 1 foot length roughly away from the wall. This can be used for balance. It's not necessarily needed, but it is kind of nice. And then this foot is going to be out in front. Now I would say, because I had shoes on, I'm a little far away from the wall. I would say I'd like to be a little bit closer. There we go. As you get closer to the wall, we'll put more stress on the knee and the quad and the IT band, versus out here it's going to be more glute and hamstring. Not what we're looking for, just a different exercise. So here, and then the wall slide is just keeping your back against the wall and sinking straight down, tapping the heel, okay? And then standing. Okay, you can imagine that if you're just starting out, we would go pretty slow with this one, okay? Because this angle of knee flexion here is oftentimes the most painful portion of leg extension, leg flexion, with someone who has this issue. So I'm intentionally having you do this because we need to stress it in the appropriate dose to be able to improve the tolerance of the tissue. So as you're doing this, I'm okay with a 2 or 3 out of 10 pain, as long as it feels safe and you don't feel like, you might not know, but as long as it feels safe in the moment, and then the next day you're not significantly worse, then it's a good indication that what you did was perfectly fine. Okay, so one more time here. This is just for balance. We're gonna sink down, knee's gonna go forward, we're gonna touch the heel, and then stand. To make this easier, a couple things we can do. One would just be support your body weight a ton and do whatever you can manage. That's tough to know how much you're putting in here. So as far as progressing it, there's no way of really knowing how much force you're putting into the dowel. So what I would do instead, you can still use the dowel, but what I would do instead would be find a position you can tolerate. Maybe that's higher up, and then just hold an isometric. So have your phone, your watch, or whatever, and I would just see if you could hold for 5 sets of 45 seconds with whatever rest periods you need in between, okay? And then you can work your way a little bit lower and pause here, okay? A couple ways we can make this harder. One would be just loading it up a bit. So grabbing a kettlebell, you could have 2 dumbbells, 2 kettlebells, whatever, or you could hold one here, and then we're just sinking down, controlling, standing up. Obviously we work on going a little bit lower, okay? Another way to stress this tissue even a bit more would be to use a ramp or put your heel on a plate, and you'll just notice that the stresses on the knee are even greater because the knee is translating more forward over the toe. And finally, because most people do things quickly and not just slowly in life, is we would want to get back to doing some type of plyometric exercise, which there's a ton you could do. But in this sense, we want to be able to decelerate and slow your body weight down quickly. Okay? So you can imagine going down a hill, a mountain, unexpected terrain. You have to be able to catch yourself quickly and have the ability in the knee to do that safely. So here's a nice way we can do it. We're just here, we're gonna drop quickly, catch, and then stand up. Catch, and then stand up. If you wanna go quick up and down, you can. I typically like people to drop, catch, really own that position, and then come up. If we're doing these moves that fall more into the power category, we're moving quickly, the demand is higher. So I err on the side of less reps and less sets, typically around 3 sets of 5 reps versus if you're doing the isometrics, 5 sets of 45 seconds, or if you're doing the loaded slow version, probably 3 sets of 12 to 20 reps. And just like any rehab exercise, the frequency depends on what you can tolerate. Typically with the isometrics, because they're lower demand in general, at least this one is, you could tolerate that every day. But if we start doing the drop catches, the quick ones, or a heavy slow, then you're gonna need a day in between to rest. So that's it, the 3 exercises that you should do to finally overcome IT band pain and have a lasting solution. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you found this content helpful, 1, I would love for you to like, and I would love for you to subscribe. It helps us out a ton, and we post videos like this every single week to provide as much value to you guys as possible, and we'd love to have you a part of the community. Finally, if you are local to the Reno Sparks Tahoe area and you want some more in-depth guidance with an actual plan to take out all the guesswork so you don't have to think about anything, then make sure to follow us on Instagram. Head over to the website. The link is down below, mvmtrx.com, to book a free discovery call to see how we can help you getting back to living pain-free. We'll see you guys next time.